In 1933, millions of Americans woke up to a country that still looked familiar, but no longer worked the way it had the day before. Banks shut their doors. Store shelves emptied faster than they could be restocked. Cash became scarce almost overnight. And suddenly, the most valuable people in town weren't the richest. They were the ones who knew how to live without needing permission. Your grandparents, or their parents, grew up in a world where survival wasn't a hobby. It was a skill set. They knew how to feed a family from a half-acre lot, how to preserve meat without electricity, how to repair tools that today would be thrown away without a second thought. And many of the things they did every single day, today, they might raise eyebrows, or even break modern rules and regulations. Not because they were reckless, but because they were self-reliant. And in a world increasingly dependent on fragile systems, that forgotten knowledge may be more valuable now than ever. Stay with me, because some of these skills can still matter when everything else stops working. Let's begin. 25. Collecting rainwater without permission. For generations, catching rain wasn't unusual. It was normal. A barrel under the roof meant free water for gardens, animals, and daily use. It wasn't called water harvesting. It was called common sense. But today, in some places, it's regulated or restricted entirely, because water is now managed, controlled, and allocated. Yet the truth remains the same. When systems fail, water is the first thing you need. Backyard butchering. Once nearly every rural family knew how to process their own food. Chickens, rabbits, hogs, deer. Nothing was outsourced. Nothing was wasted. It wasn't industrial. It was survival. Today, it's restricted in many areas. But the lesson is simple. Food security begins when you control your own food source. 23. Saving seeds year after year. Before store-bought seed packets, families saved their own. Best plants became next season's future. Over time, crops adapted to local soil and weather. This wasn't gardening. It was long-term survival planning, because one harvest is temporary, but saved seeds can last generations. 22. Root cellaring. Before refrigeration, food didn't disappear in winter. It went underground. Potatoes, apples, carrots, cabbage, stored in cool earth that preserved them naturally. No electricity, no machinery, just physics and knowledge. 21. Rendering animal fat. Nothing was wasted. Fat was transformed into lard and tallow, used for cooking, lighting, soap, and preservation. One resource, multiple uses. Today most people throw it away. Back then, it was survival currency. 20. Foraging wild foods. The land itself was a pantry. Berries, greens, nuts, mushrooms. People knew when and where to find them, because survival meant knowing your environment, not ignoring it. Reusing everything. Nothing was single-use. Flour sacks became clothing. Glass jars became storage. Metal tins became tools. Waste simply didn't exist. 18. Home remedies. Before pharmacies were everywhere, medicine came from kitchens and gardens. Garlic, onion, herbs, roots. Not myths, practical first response care, because waiting wasn't always an option. 17. Cooking on wood stoves. One stove did everything. Heat the home, cook the food, warm the water, dry the clothes. One system, 4 functions. 16. Keeping animals for daily food. Milk didn't come from a store. It came from animals nearby. A cow or goats meant daily nutrition. Fresh food every single day. 15. Bartering instead of buying. When cash was scarce, value still existed. Eggs for flour, repairs for meat, labor for firewood. Trade kept communities alive. 14. Backyard chickens. Chickens turned scraps into eggs, meat, and fertilizer. Small input, constant return. Efficient, reliable, local. 13. Making soap at home. Soap wasn't bought, it was made. Fat and lye created a basic necessity for hygiene and survival, because cleanliness wasn't optional. 12. Preserving meat without refrigeration. Drying. These methods made food last months, sometimes longer, because spoilage wasn't acceptable. 11. Hand pump wells. When electricity fails, water stops. Unless you have a hand pump. Simple, reliable, independent. 10. Mending clothes. Clothes were repaired, not replaced. Every stitch extended life, because durability mattered more than convenience. 9. Saving cooking grease. Nothing from cooking was wasted. Grease became oil, flavor, and calories, stored beside the stove for daily use. 8. Building with salvaged materials. Old materials were reused constantly. Wood, brick, metal, glass, because resourcefulness built shelter, not stores. 7. Heating with local fuel. Wood, coal, anything available nearby. Heat wasn't imported. It was gathered. Local fuel meant local control. 6. Canning food for winter. Summer abundance became winter survival. Jars lined shelves like stored security. Food preserved at peak freshness. 5. Cleaning with basic materials. Ash, vinegar, sand. Simple tools, effective results, because cleaning doesn't require branding. 4. Community skill sharing. No one knew everything, but someone always knew something. Communities survived because knowledge was shared, not stored alone. Feeding animals with scraps. Nothing edible was thrown away. Scraps became eggs, meat, and fertilizer. A closed loop of survival. Repairing tools. Broken tools weren't replaced. They were fixed, sharpened, rebuilt, restored, because tools were too valuable to discard. Growing food at home, at the center of it all was the garden. Not decoration. Production. Food. Medicine. Independence. Everything started there, and everything depended on it. Final words. These skills weren't illegal because they were wrong. In many cases, they simply became inconvenient in a modern system built on dependence and centralization. But your grandparents understood something powerful. Resilience doesn't come from owning more. It comes from knowing more. Knowing how to produce, how to preserve, how to repair, how to adapt. Because when systems fail, skills don't. And neither does self-reliance. So ask yourself, which one of these forgotten skills would you bring back first?